All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us for our latest webinar in our series in June. Today will be presented by Mark Dudman, and it's called Breaking Bad Habits. During the presentation, if you've got any questions or you'd like to make some comments, please use the chat or the Q&A that's at the bottom of your screen. We may hold the questions till the end, depending on what they are and how they fit into the presentations, but that shouldn't stop you from asking them. And also, if you would like to remain anonymous, when you ask the question, you can just click the little box that says, make my question anonymous, and then we won't know who it is. So I will now hand it over to Mark, and I'll see you at the end of the presentation when we do a Q&A. So Mark, over to you.
Thank you. So, hi everyone. As Owen said, Mark Dudman is my name. I am a Senior Risk Consultant for DriveRisk Australasia. And today is my second webinar in the series DriveRisk are running. And yes, the good old days with dishing out a good old-fashioned spanking. Bit of conjecture whether this was actually effective in changing behaviour, but time will tell on that one. Now, the intent of today's webinar is to assist coaches in getting better results. And from my 10+ years of experience using the DriveCam safety program, I've seen varied results, and this is really due to knowledge of coaches on how to effectively assist drivers during a change process. When I was researching for this webinar, I found a number of tactics and tips that I think will help simplify the process, especially for people who have never been in a position to coach or train, which certainly can be daunting when you're talking to drivers, as the usual response from the driver when you talk about coaching session is conflict. And this is generally based on past experiences. So by changing the method and breaking down the barriers, you'll have a much better opportunity to make positive change to behaviour and rapidly reduce your on-road risk exposure, which really is all about improving your safety culture. So I'm going to take my head off the screen there, and then everyone can focus on the slide deck coming through. So just bear with me 1 second. Whoops, there we go. All right. So who am I? A little bit of past experience is I've been in the transport industry for since about 1989, I should say. Sales manager, project manager, state manager, regional manager for a heavy vehicle telematics solution provider, managed a waste depot of 30 trucks, drivers, admin staff and mechanics, and I was the first Australian-based video safety specialist for IBCS, or in-vehicle camera systems, in 2009. And IBCS joined forces with DriveRisk South Africa to become DriveRisk Australasia. So I've had about a bit over 10 years experience doing or using video as a safety and behaviour change process. So just to give you a bit of a frame of what we're going to do today, it is going to be quite intensive. The information that I've tried to keep as light as I can, so especially on the science aspects. I hope I don't lose anyone during the webinar. The topics we'll cover are intended to evoke thought and conversation, so please don't hesitate to put questions through on the Q&A. Little bit of a disclaimer, I'm not a psychologist, might need to go and see one, but please, if you are looking for heavily academically weighted questions, you might need to go and see a professional about that. Now, to get you into the mindset for today, what is a habit and how are habits formed? When you're driving, do you ever think, how the hell did I get here? Did I just run a red light, or have I been speeding the whole time? Oh my God, you know, a whole number of different thoughts and emotions come through your head. And now think about, you know, when you're going through any sort of learning processes, have you ever been in that situation where the teacher just totally and utterly loses you, but you see others absorbing everything with ease? And possibly when you've been in the teacher or coaching role, do you think, are my students ready for this? Will my message be received? And the lessons I want to discuss, will it actually be understood? And if not, why? So I pose these few scenarios to get you thinking about learning, teaching and changing. And the following webinar will hopefully shed some light on the stages all people go through when they undertake change of behaviour. Understand that you as the coach or the teacher need to vary your teaching style to fit in with individuals' learning styles themselves. It's not a one size fits all. And being a good coach requires some additional work to make sure you are delivering universally understood and enduring lessons. But most importantly, you must have a mechanism to uncover the hidden or subconscious behaviours. And I'll run through how using the Lytics Drive Camp program does the discovery process, which means you only need to focus on the assisting in the change journey. Now, the slide deck will be available for anyone who wants it. You should receive an email in the coming days with some links to download this presentation. And at the end of the presentation, there is a page that does have some reference points on there. And if you want to dig a bit deeper, feel free, because it is quite an Aladdin's cave when you start going down this journey yourselves. So what is a habit? Now, Cambridge Dictionary defines a habit as something that you do often and regularly, sometimes without knowing that you were doing it, but there are many definitions available. You know, if you look at multiple different reference points in the internet, there's a whole stack of different definitions. But if we piece them all together into a summation of the various definitions, you'll find a habit is a behavioural pattern that we repeat often or in regular intervals, such that the repetition serves to improve our ability and familiarity with the behavioural pattern. Eventually, after a certain amount of repetition, we might be displaying the behaviour pattern without any conscious thought about it. In essence, it becomes subconscious. So the subconscious mind, if you think about yourself, most people would say they have self-control and control your behaviour. Surprisingly, our actions remain under limited control given the driving force behind every action. Behaviour, when you look at it, is broken down into two different things. There's task versus action. Now, tasks are performed via the conscious mind, but most actions depend on the subconscious mind. The conscious mind is analytical and logical, whereas the subconscious mind is said to be irrational. So that puts that subconscious behavior into a different context in terms of having that ability to control or change your behavior, because generally speaking, you're a little bit blind to what's going on. So let's consider this in the driving context. When you first learn to drive, you're extremely focused. You concentrate on the entire process. You notice every bump, every pothole, every obstacle. As you become skilled, your subconscious mind registers your actions and you drive without making conscious effort. You automatically avoid obstacles, change gears, perform other actions at the same time, such as listening to music or talking on the phone or to your passenger. As your proficiency increases, the driving process becomes natural and your decisions are automatic. In real terms, your habits become subconscious. And this means most of the time, once you've developed a habit, you really have no control, as it's driven by your subconscious until you go through an active change program. So why is behavior change so hard? Well, it's basically because your behavior is governed by your irrational subconscious. And that means you don't even know you're doing it. Now, there's been many studies over the years, but in 2018, there was one done by E.T. Berkman, and he put through a journal, and it was titled The Neuroscience of Goals and Behavior Change. And he extensively researched behavior change from a neuroscientific perspective and concluded, the quote on the screen there, humans are great at setting goals, but not nearly as good as attaining them. There are two distinct processes in the behavior change space. There is the will, which refers to the motivational and emotional aspects of behavior change. The will is the why of behavior change. Why is the behavior important to you? Why do you want to change, and why now? And the second portion is the way. And in contrast, the way refers to the cognitive and informational aspects of behaviour change. The way is the how of behaviour change. How is behaviour change going to unfold? What skills and capacities does it require? What is the specific plan? In essence, it's goal setting. Both the will and the way are necessary for successful behaviour change. A goal requires a will and also a way. So from the coaching perspective, you need to recognise the ideas and the interventions and methods to attempt a behaviour change program. The need to work on an equally balanced program that activates both the will and both the way. So being open to change. So learning new skills requires a thing called executive function, which is a term neuroscientists use to describe the way. And to achieve this, you need conscious attention. The cost is reflected as a sense of effort. So changing behaviour can feel hard because it means directing your mental focus on one goal and ignoring others. Now, reward value. It's deeply influenced by past experience. And an important consequence of this biological fact is that new behaviours are rarely as motivating as ones that have previously been rewarded. Why try a new exercise, for example, when it may or may not feel as good as one you know? And certainly sitting down with a beer in your hand and watching Netflix is certainly enjoyable. And as a coach, you need to identify what each person values most dearly. Is it personal values, things that are central to one's personal values and beliefs? Or is it social value? Now that's leveraging social norms and interpersonal relationships to increase the importance of a goal. And both of these have advantages over tangible forms such as money. By having the insight about how, when, and why behaviour change efforts succeed or fail can help you uncover new ways to coach successfully to promote change and make behaviour change seem less daunting. So just a quick wrap up of that little portion, and I want to go through to give you some overviews after each one just to try and help you absorb what's going on. So habits and behaviours is mostly driven by subconscious, so you really do have limited control over them. And understand that humans tend to fail more often than they succeed when it comes to behaviour change, based on subconscious being pretty much irrational, and you really don't know that you're doing them. And by working out the will, which is the why, and the way, which is the how of that change process, you'll have much better success. Focus on one behaviour at a time before you move on to another. Make sure you've succeeded in changing that behaviour, because the brain just simply can't focus its energy on multiple tasks of behaviour change, because it's all to do with subconscious. And discover the motivational process. Once you've discovered that, what motivates them, you're then giving, I guess, the carrot on the stick sort of process, and target your lessons accordingly. Now, there's been many, as I keep going, there's lots of studies based around change and behaviour. Now, Prochaska and DiClemente did a study in the 1980s and determined there are actually 5 stages of the change process. The first one is pre-contemplation. So really, you're not ready. No intention to change behaviour in the foreseeable future. Contemplation, that's getting ready, aware that a problem exists and are seriously thinking about change, but have not made the commitment to do so. Preparation, so you're ready, considered as the information gathering and the planning stage. Now, there is the big issue with this stage. 50% of people who attempt behaviour change and skip this stage will actually relapse within 21 days. Action. Actually modifying your behaviour involves the most overt behavioural changes and requires considerable commitment of time and energy. And once you've done the change, it's maintenance. Work to prevent relapses and consolidate the gains attained. For harder or addictive type behaviours, take it from a smoker, I know it's hard, but people, mobile phones, for instance, I think kids are born with them in their hands these days, but that type of behaviour can last from 6 months to an indeterminate period of time from the initial action. So I guess that puts it in context why some things take longer than others to effectively change. The process of change. Within each stage, the specific actions called processes of change help someone mentally move through each stage successfully. Now, I'm going to work on the contemplation stage. The process of change are consciousness raising and self-reevaluation. Now, consciousness raising is the process of actively becoming more aware, mindful or conscious of the current situation, and an acceptance that change is required. So if you consider most behaviour is subconscious, this makes perfect sense that this stage is critical in effective change. Self-reevaluation flows naturally from consciousness raising. Self-reevaluation means taking stock or appraisal of the behaviour that needs to be changed. Now, this is where I'd expect most drivers sit, providing you have given them some behaviours that have been captured that are displaying risk or bad habits. And at DriveRisk, we provide and support the Lytics DriveCam program. It's a global leader in the driver safety area and works by uncovering the hidden risk that most drivers don't even know they are doing it because they are habits. And as we have learned, mostly this is governed by your irrational subconscious. Now, one thing to avoid when you're going through, assisting someone with the change process is avoid self-regulation. So basically, avoid leaving the student to change their own behaviour. It has many pitfalls, and there's a thing called temporal discounting. Now, this means we tend to favour the immediate rewards over larger future rewards. Things like, let's eat this cheeseburger now for the yum factor, as opposed to eating a salad for your future self. So a quick wrap up on that one. Before change can commence, determine if someone's ready. And you have to really do that by assessing the stages of change. Each stage is very important. You need to systematically work through each one of them. Don't skip the steps. Assist in the conscious awareness and reevaluation. And the conscious awareness really is one of the critical elements here. Because it's subconscious, you don't know you're doing it, so you have to be made consciously aware that something needs changing. Eliminate the temporal discounting to show the new behaviour is easy, rewarding and normal. And don't leave it to the student. I think I've skipped a screen there. Now, there's very different learning styles as determined by a gentleman named Neil Fleming. Now, Neil developed a thing called VARK, which focuses on the idea that individuals retain and process information differently and have preferred learning models that allow them to learn at their best. And by having the understanding of people's learning styles, you'll help or you'll reach your audience better. So visual, which is the V in the VARK. Visual learners prefer to take in information using charts, maps, graphs, diagrams, and more. Using images to explain concept and ideas is the best way to reach a visual learner. Auditory. This style of learning describes those who learn best when information is heard or spoken. Read or write. They're the preference of people who have a reading or writing preference. Information to be presented using words. And finally, kinesthetic. Kinesthetic learners learn best when they can actually use tactile experience and carry out physical activity to practice applying new information. Now, knowing how to address the learning needs of individuals is an important part of creating meaningful coaching experiences and help them retain what they actually learn. And a quick little bit of info here. Visual learners actually make up about 65% of our population. Now, VARK Learning has developed a simple questionnaire, and I'd encourage coaches to download this and have each driver complete it. What this will do will actually help you work through on-road risk, but will assess you in providing a better training outcome. You can break your groups out based on their specific learning style and develop your program specific to each one. Now, because 65% are visual learners, you know that if you can concentrate on that area, you are going to probably reach most of your audience. And then that last 30-odd%, you really just need to refine what you're doing for those ones and deliver those lessons to those groups, which is varied from the visual learners. Now, having this intel on hand will help you understand, but more importantly, help your students attain what they're being taught. So being a good coach, an article written in about 2012, which was published in the Harvard Business Review, concluded that to assist people in the mental approach, you need to discover the mechanism or impetus to change behaviour. People will change if they see their behaviour as easy, rewarding, and normal. So easy. This means the person being asked to behave differently believes, I have the skills and knowledge to do it, and there are no obstacles to me doing this. I won't get in trouble and no one will get in my way. Too often we ask people to behave in ways that seem hard to them. Either we haven't taught them the necessary skills or they've experienced previous pushback when they've tried to do something and they really just don't want to cop the, I guess that grief process again. Rewarding. For a behaviour to be rewarding, the person has to feel doing this behaviour will give me results. Is it either emotionally or practically that are valuable to me? And this is where behaviour connects to values. You have to show people how behaving in these ways will support what they value. For example, if someone deeply values having positive human interactions, you have to help them see how behaving in a certain way towards customers will improve the interactions. They'll find that behaviour rewarding and normal. And this is the big one. In order to change the way we behave, most people need to feel that people like me act this way and people I admire and want to emulate act this way. So human beings, for the most part, don't want to be the odd man out. Even people who consider themselves as renegades tend to emulate renegades, which is a little bit of a contradiction. But anyway, if you want employees to behave differently, you have to be able to give them some evidence that their peers, at least the ones they like and admire, and their role models are behaving in those ways. And as their boss or superior, you have to adopt or model the behavior yourself. So one size doesn't fit all. And I guess from the lessons learned through the stages and also the styles, you can see that there is some requirement for yourself to be a little bit flexible in what you're trying to do. So let's put it into context with dealing with drivers. Let's go through what most operators can do now based on what they can measure as factual on-road risky behaviour. Is it based on the driver's knowledge? Well, the driver has an appropriate licence, so you should be reasonably confident that they have the knowledge. Skills, again, the driver has a licence, so you would have confidence they have the appropriate skill set. And capacity. Capacity is probably the big one. The driver knows what to do, how to do it, but just can't because the coaching has not resonated effectively with them, or they simply won't change, be that through pig-headedness or whatever it may be. But with the current COR legislation, you may need to start to demonstrate that you've escalated that up the chain a little bit. And potentially, as I like to put it, you might need to advise the driver to familiarise yourself with Seek. But that usually comes at a cost because you're going to get someone new on who have no knowledge of their behaviour or their risk footprint. So it's better to train and change as opposed to bring in new. So you need to have that solution that will factually identify a behaviour to change, and this is where most companies fall short. So being a good teacher or a coach requires you to apply some effort to work out what each individual will react best to. You do need to outline the practical application, what you are attempting to change. So this is basically called the lesson. So from the lesson, you need to establish the goals. And remember, the brain needs to solely focus on one thing or one behaviour at a time. So don't bombard your driver with 1,000 different things that you want them to focus on because it will fail. And this is accepted as reasonably practical practicable under COR, because you are making a progress and a methodical, practical way of dealing with risk, but working through it in a way that is actually going to achieve an end result. So you can't change a thing until you know what you're changing. And this is really the concept behind using the DriveCam program. So the philosophy really is you have to have that mechanism. So once you've got the system to uncover risky behaviour or behaviour that you think needs to be changed, you can then start to make action on that. And the DriveCam process is a closed loop, and it really takes all the guesswork out of that discovery process. And just in that bottom right corner there, the ideal coaching session is brief and collaborative. So, you know, I've heard people go, oh, it takes me half an hour to do a coaching session. That's really way over the top. We expect things to be, 5-10 minutes maximum, because you want to be to the point. You don't want to blame people, and you want to deliver a clear message, but it also needs to be positive. And the collaboration aspect of it, that means you're involving the driver in the change process. So again, that will assist in the conscious awareness aspect. Now I'm going to run in through each individual point of the closed loop here. So the device actively monitors and captures exception-based risk. So it's not a constant record system. It will only activate when it's a motion or by the artificial intelligence and motor machine vision direct driver capture on specific risks. That then gets offloaded up to the Lytx DriveCam cloud for analysis to be undertaken. Now, that's a very critical aspect of it. Each and every event that's uploaded is viewed and analysed by an experienced risk analyst. So it's a very extensive course, and there's a lot for people to understand, and it takes about 9 weeks before you actually go through the theoretical and then some practical processes during a bit of a buddy system. We then send that back to you through our online portal for you then to review that first. Now, this is really important. You must review stuff first, because you don't want to get a driver in to do your coaching session and you're playing the video for the first time, and excuse language, where you have the oh shit moment. So get the driver in, coach the driver in the processes that we've explained, and off they go. Now, with the discovery process, you then need to, once you've had the discovery process done, which is what DriveCam achieves, you then want to adapt and apply the learnings from the previous slides to develop your strategies to coach your team. And this is a little bit more of the time-consuming aspect of being a successful coach, because you need to understand, where is each of my drivers up in the change cycle? So that's that 5 stages. What each individual learning style is. So that's that for the 4 areas under VARC. And then using the closed loop process of DriveCam, because it's perpetual, so it's constantly in there, it's constantly capturing all the ongoing risk and behaviours and bad habits. This allows you to monitor and measure the success of behaviour change, and is equally as important, monitor your coaching effectiveness. So don't be disheartened if results are not immediate, because it can take time for this to come into effect. There's some studies there that say the minimum for change to take effect is actually 21 days. So in the first month, if you see some repeat behaviours, don't be disheartened. But that also gives you the opportunity to be self-reflective and assess your style of working the delivery of the behaviour change message. Possibly what you thought was the stage and style for a specific driver needs to be reassessed, or do some trial and error, vary your teaching methods. But it doesn't stop there. You need to have ongoing engagement or maintenance, which is one of the 5 stages. Now, with the individual, the maintenance process, you've got to keep that up, because you want to ensure there is no relapse. And the DriveCam system helps you do that, because it will continue to capture risky behaviours when it's being displayed. So in essence, DriveCam does the maintenance for you, and all you need to do is develop your training and coaching processes around that. But then you can use the online portal to track your coaching effectiveness. So we actually use that of one of the key areas on the portal, because you need to know where you're up to, and we don't want you to guess at that, because again, you're open to failure. So if we're giving you all that information, that's going to give you a lot of the key bullet points for you then to take appropriate action, whether you need to change, vary, or continue on the merry way that you're on. So let's put all this into a practical coaching session. So we've got Bob the driver. He's recently had a rear end collision, so he knows that he needs to change something. So let's put him in the contemplation stage. You've run some of the identification techniques that VARK offers, and you know Bob is a visual learner. Bob's a 20-year veteran, not a bad track record, but certainly room for improvement. Has the old school mentality of faster is better. Good operator, quite skillful, but has a low capacity to actually change. The old saying, can't teach an old dog new tricks type mentality. So Bob's been with the company for a few years, so you know that he's very much a family man. He's highly regarded by his peers, and he's a bit of a reputation as being a bit of a hard ass. So how do we coach Bob? So show Bob some data on productivity compared to others doing similar loads in geolocations that he operates within. Discuss that increasing his following distance will have no negative productivity outcomes, and explain under chain of responsibility, it's about safety, not productivity. Show Bob his DriveCam profile, the data set of analytics, his risk score, where Bob sits in comparison to his peers, frame by frame run-throughs with timelines, G-force and reaction data. As a visual learner, this is the key learning method for a person such as Bob, because we know he's a visual learner using VARK. Build Bob up in terms of his peer position. He's the yard boss type conversation. Set the example. Emphasize the social values or the family values. We know he's a family man, so let's have that conversation. You know, you would hate that the person you run into was your family and it was another driver doing that. So in essence, you're pulling on the heartstrings. Ease of increasing following distance. Explain that increasing his following distance is going to have zero pace improvements. So why expose yourself to another rear ender, which is going to cost you a fine, potentially cost you your license, and obviously that eliminates your job here. Discover the reward aspect of Bob's personality. Now, this could be a little bit of trial and error. Hey, let's get Bob up at the next toolbox when he's actually shown or displayed improvements in his change. See if that actually has some beneficial results on Bob's application to continuing along on the change program. Make Bob the new normal. You know, no bashing like in the old days, Bob. If you lead this initiative, everyone will follow your lead. Things like, we want you to be the safety leader, and we really want you, Bob, to drive the safety culture for the guys in the yard. And make it positive. Sorry, I don't know why my little screen thing's there. And make it positive. Ask Bob if he had his time over again, how would he change things to have a more positive outcome? Bob, as a professional driver, will tell you what he needs to change. Now, you just need to work on the process of assisting Bob to achieve the change. But by having Bob verbalize what he needs to change, you've now started that consciousness, awareness aspect of the change process. So you're going to have a much better result because he's now consciously aware of something that he needs to change. So how DriveRisk client success managers can help you improve your coaching effectiveness. Well, we actually coach the coaches. We train your coaches on methods to achieve the best safety outcomes. We can provide you with best practices, both in an advice and hard copy. And we run monthly summary reports. Now, these are very, just a one-pager, but it's a snapshot of what you've done over the past month. And it helps you visualize where your risk footprint is sitting. And then we can work with you to working on what needs to be focused on, in essence, setting goals for the following month. Quarterly performance review. Now, this is a 3-month activity that we undertake, and this is a really deep dive into the historical of what worked and what possibly didn't, then set goals for the next quarter. Our QPR is where we want your executives involved. Under the COR, the execs are first in line for potential fine and prosecution. So we want them to have an understanding of what we're trying to achieve from a safety risk improvement. And that way they're now part of the 4 pillars of the chain of responsibility, and will certainly help to improve your HV&L compliance. Access to the Lytx Global Resources Centre. Now, this is online and it's available to anyone. You don't actually need to be a client of ours, but we hope you certainly were. And Lytx has the biggest driver behaviour database. Currently, we're capturing about 1 billion kilometres per week of driver-focused behaviour. Now, this is tagged, analysed, and includes corrective insights for you to assist you. Now, Frost & Sullivan awarded Lytx Best Driver Behaviour Solution in 2009. They're the pioneers of driver risk detection and behaviour change programs. Been running for about 20 odd years, and we certainly continue to adapt and evolve. Now, the SF device, or the new SF device hitting the Australian market this month, incorporates the next generation of direct detection capabilities, and that includes artificial intelligence and machine vision. So what that does, it looks for specific behaviour patterns inside what your vehicle, what your driver's actually doing, without having a motion activated incident to trigger an event. So what that will do is provide you with intelligent, scientific and factual behaviour data that will reduce your on-road footprint, risk footprint, I should say. And the next part of the chain, I guess, is really up to you to move to the next stage. Oops, sorry, went too far. You must start the change process, and only then can you accurately evaluate your coaching effectiveness. By doing the extra steps I've outlined, you have a clear understanding of a driver's stage for commencing change, each driver's learning style and methods to best deliver your message. And be prepared to change and grow yourself. By being self-reflective and being ready to be a leader of change, it will be very rewarding for you and your staff. And DriveRisk will certainly help you achieve the best on-road safety results possible.